fancy car and maybe a couple of boats laying around. As long as at least one of the cars worked and some of the boats floated, you were doing pretty good. But today, that just doesn't seem like it's enough anymore. Today, you gotta have really fancy things, like a space program or your own island. Well, I'm not gonna be able to create an island. No, we're not gonna create an island. What we can do, though, we can make our own space program, just like all those rich guys do. But naturally, we're going to do it a little bit better. Because those rich guys, they just want to spend money just for the sake of telling people how much money they spend. We're not going to do that. Mostly because we can't. So what you need is some PVC pipe, a little bit of wood, and a little duct tape. Well, maybe a lot of duct tape. Hold on. Need to make the fins. The fins are going to make sure our rocket flies straight. So get yourself some wood and a saw. If you're a good handyman, you got a good eye, you really don't need to measure this all that well. And you have a fin. No problem at all. Now that we've finished cutting the fins, all you have to do is go through the pieces and eventually you'll find one that looks like it works. Now we're going to want to put some coating on this, just like we're going to want to do with our rocket a little while later. But that looks pretty good to me. So now that we have the fins created, those are going to help our rocket fly straight, all the way up. But we still need to give this thing a sturdy coating, just to make sure it doesn't fall apart and nothing hurts it. I would recommend a handyman's secret weapon, duct tape. I would recommend you go pretty thick on this. You don't want people to think you're cheap, do you? As you come to the end of this, you got to make sure you only seal up the one end. Because if you seal up both ends, the rocket's not going to go anywhere because the gas won't come out, kind of like your wife wishes would happen to you. Now that we've got our protective coating on our rocket, and we have our protective coating on our fins, it's time to put the rocket and the fins together. They don't work too good when they're separate. The problem is you might notice that we're getting a little bit low on duct tape. So you got to make sure that you keep a lot of it in store. Now I got to admit, duct tape isn't cheap, but if you can't afford the duct tape, then hey, maybe you can't afford to have your own space program. So, let's get to work. Fins to our rocket. We have the rocket part of our rocket. We need to add some form of communication to it, because you can't just send a missile up into the air. You have to be able to talk to it, otherwise nobody's going to believe that you ever got it up into space in the first place. So, for this I would recommend we use Harold's cell phone. He doesn't use this a lot, Okay, he uses it a lot. That's why I'm doing this. I'm doing him a favor. Maybe someday he'll thank me. Now, I would recommend that you just let that slide on there. Just let her go. That's a good sound. It means it's in there nice and tight. Now, all we have to do is make sure that it was turned on when we put it in there, and at any time, I can call this cell phone and I can make a call to outer space. And eventually, who knows? Maybe some aliens from a distant planet will pick up the phone and I'll be able to tell them where I am, who I am, and why they probably really don't want to come here in the first place. Now I've added this pointy piece to the front of our rocket to help it fly a little bit straighter. I'm not sure why, but most rockets that you see have something sharp on the end. Okay, so the last step we need to do is we need to take care of the fuel. I was thinking about going with gasoline or rocket fuel or whatever you could find, but that just didn't seem safe to me. So I decided that I was going to empty about 1,000 shotgun shells into it and I'd say we're pretty close to 1,000. Now that we got it full of powder, we just want to add a little something on there to keep the powder in. That way it doesn't spill. And it's just that simple. We have our own space program now, and soon we will go where no man has dared go before, except for the other people who've been there, but we're going to catch up to them. We're going to do it a lot simpler and a lot more efficiently. We're going to have a lot of big government contracts, but I won't forget where I came from. I won't forget where I started. But I think we better have our first test launch. Pretty excited? I'm going to grab the lighter, and I'll meet you outside. Remember, if the women can't find you handsome, they should at least find you handy, and you should probably fix that hole in your roof before your wife gets home.